Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to head over to Estonia once again, and we're going to have a look at yet another of the beers that I brought back with me from my recent trip over there. For this review we're going to return to a brewery who have featured on the channel a good number of times before, and these guys have also featured on the Meet the Brewery segment that I've been doing for you more recently too. So for this review then we are going to go to the southeastern part of Estonia, to Tartu, the second city, and we're having a look at yet another beer from Pühaste Pruulikoda. So this particular beer is called the Dekadents. It's an Imperial Stout coming in at 11.2% ABV, so it is a little bit of a monster, and this one has been aged with raisins and rum-soaked vanilla beans, so I think this one will be really quite nice actually. This beer was very kindly given to me by one of the owners, Eero. As I mentioned a little minute ago, I did a Meet the Brewery segment with these guys. You can go and check that out, and I interviewed one of the owners, Aroma, and he gave me 5 beers, I think it was, to bring back with me to Sweden and review for you. So this is the first of them that you're going to see on the channel. He did give me some really nice ones actually that are quite difficult to find, and he was going to give me more, but I only had space for a couple of them actually. But yeah, massive thank you to Eero for doing the interview with me and for giving me these beers to review for you here on the channel. So you will see these appearing over the next couple of weeks and months and things like that. So I hope you enjoy these reviews, and like I say, do go and check out my my interview I did with Eero. Very nice dude, and you know, always willing to talk about beer and things. It was great to meet him. So yeah, looking forward to trying this one. It sounds like it's going to be another lovely Imperial Stout from these guys, and hopefully it makes for an interesting review. So as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Puhäste Pruulikoda before, and you will definitely see more from these guys in the near future. There's all the usual social media down there as well. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel of course has a geography based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you're interested in. Do check out the playlist of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Estonian beers that I've reviewed for you, and that will be getting added to regularly over the next little while because I bought all of these beers back from my trip of course. And as always, do please get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about Puhäste Pruulikoda then, on to my brewery notes. So as I've mentioned to you before, Puhäste Pruulikoda are based in Tartu in southeastern Estonia, and the company was founded back in 2016 by Eero Mander, Lauri Äiderman and Ular Kaljurund. So Lauri comes from a background in IT, whereas Ular is a businessman, and he specialised in, you know, the restaurant business and bars and things like that as well, whereas Eero on the other hand was the home brewer, and he homebrewed for a number of years starting back in 2011, and he was brewing in his summer house in Pusa, which is what this brewery is actually named after. But he released his first commercial beers in 2014 under the name Blessed Virgin, and these proved to be really quite successful. But prior to that he was actually studying theology from what he told me, and he was also quite into DJing and things like that too. So a very interesting guy. If you want to learn more about Eero, of course, as I say, the main man behind the brewing, you can go and watch my kind of Meet the Brewery segment if you like. But these guys started out as a gypsy brewery, and they brewed at various other breweries in Estonia before deciding to start up their own brewery in 2015. So they opened up this brewery in September 2016, which you can find on Tea Street in the southeastern part of Tartu. It's a former industrial laundry from what Eero was telling me, and they've already had to expand their fermentation capacity quite a few times because of the high demand, and they now brew around 3,500 hectolitres of beer per year. They've got a 2-vessel system that they use, and they've also got the Kelder bar in the city as well, which you can check out, and you will see a kind of out and about video that I filmed there at some point. I will get that edited together and publish it in a couple of weeks time, I think a few weeks after this review appears. But yeah, as of August 2020 when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced around 150 different kinds of beer. A lot of their beer is exported to various places around Europe. I think some of it has made it out to Asia and things, and some of it over to America as well from what I understand. But these guys are probably one of the best known Estonian craft breweries these days. I mean, Pujala, Tanker, Ullenaut, Lea to a degree as well, and then Puhaste. These guys are probably the best known of the Estonian craft brews. There's about 50 little breweries in Estonia these days, but those are the 5 that you are most likely to hear of if you're not living there, of course. So yeah, in my experience, these guys do some really, really nice beers. I've had some very good IPAs from these guys. The last review I did from them was the Two Sons, which was a collaboration with Pipeworks Brewing Company from Chicago in Illinois, and I think most of the beers actually I've had from Puhäste have been Imperial Stouts. These guys really excel in that particular style, adding lots of things into the Imperial Stouts, and of course they've got their barrel aging program now, the Silver Series, and you will see some of those on the channel a little bit later on. But yeah, as I say, I've had some really nice beers from these guys, and if you are interested in Estonian beer, you know, these guys are definitely worth checking out. Eero, the main brewer, he is you know, really nice guy, as I said, and he's very well thought of in the Estonian craft beer circles as well. Ian Parrell from Pohjola was telling me that, you know, Eero is one of the best brewers that he's come across in the business, so kind of shows you what you're dealing with here. But yeah, he was an awesome guy, and it was great to go and visit these guys. You know, very, very nice brewery, I have to say, so definitely check these guys out if you are interested. 1 in Imperial Stouts and 2 in Estonian craft beer. But yeah, let's get on and actually have a taste of this beer then. I'll let you just have a little look at the artwork of this one before we open it up. Again, from Puhäste, very, very nicely presented. I do like the artwork that these guys put on their beers. It is always very, very nice. And yeah, it was cool to go and visit the Kelter bar as well, actually. The craft beer scene has changed a hell of a lot since I was in Estonia the first time back in 2013. There was virtually nothing there in terms of craft beer when I was there the first time, but there's a lot of breweries now, which is great to see. But yeah, like I said to you, this one is an 11.2% Imperial Stout, and this one is aged with raisins and rum-soaked vanilla beans, actually, so it should be really, really interesting, this one. I'm not sure what this beer would actually cost, because like I say, Eero gave me this one to review, so yeah, it looks pretty cool. As you can see, I didn't realise the woman has a robot arm. That's actually pretty cool. But yeah, it says on the side here, a luscious Imperial Stout aged on raisins and rum-soaked vanilla beans, 11.2% ABV, 80 IBUs. So yeah, this one should be pretty cool, actually. Let's get it out then, and we will get on with the tasting. My first Puhäste beer out of the bottle, my first Puhäste review, actually, in what feels like a wee while, other than the Two Sons one, actually. I think the one I did before that was Black Blood, if I remember rightly, which had beet juice in it, and it was really interesting. So yeah, lots of interesting Imperial Stouts from these guys. One of the best ones I had, actually, was Trinity in Black, which they did with AF from St. Petersburg and Zagovor from Moscow, both in Russia. So yeah, really nice brewery, this one, as I say, in terms of the Imperial Stouts. I don't know if they would consider that their signature style. They do a lot of different things. But yeah, as you can see with this beer, it's poured a lovely dark sort of ebony rosewood colour. You can see the head on this one is about a quarter finger. It's a nice kind of quite dark tan colour. Not the darkest of tans that I've come across, right enough, but you can see it's just leaving a lovely kind of thick foamy layer around the edge of the glass, and it's faded away to be a very thin foamy layer on the top of this one. But yeah, 1 or 2 big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, a few little ones going up towards the bottom of the head there, and overall it does look very, very nice. So yeah, when I shine the light through this one, it actually has a nice little bit of a kind of Coca-Cola coloured edge to it, but I think, yeah, it's definitely fair to describe this one as a very dark sort of ebony colour. It's pretty much, yeah, pretty much black as night, to be honest with you. It doesn't even have, there's just a little tiny bit of a Coca-Cola kind of coloured edge around the very top of the kind of thin foamy layer there. But yeah, it looks absolutely lovely, this one, and I can tell you just from the little wafts I've got out of the aroma, this one I think is going to be a bit of a monster in terms of the aroma. So yeah, let's have a little look at this then and see how we get on. Oh yeah, straight away, this beer, this one is just an absolute monster, I have to say. It's got a lovely kind of level of complexity to it. It almost, you know, where do we start with this? It does have a little bit of a kind of slightly almost kind of very dark brown bready base to it. It does smell a little bit bready there, but it smells as if it has like a really kind of glazed, kind of toasty brown sugar layer just sitting on top of that actually. It's the brown sugars I think are really forming the backbone of this beer. So it does have a wee bit of that more kind of caramelised, treacly molasses kind of note to it, but you do get a sweet caramel in there as well. A few little elements of a kind of McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of thing, but yeah, mainly quite a kind of toasty, brown sugary note coming out of this one. So yeah, it's the brown sugars in this one are really, really lovely. You can smell, you can smell the rum in this one. I've always found that rum has a really vanilla, kind of brown sugary caney type aroma. I do love a bit of rum every so often. I don't drink it very often, to be honest with you. Very rarely drink outside of the reviews these days, to be honest with you. But you can smell that lovely rum and vanilla quality to this one. It smells beautiful actually. I love the that kind of aroma that beans. There's a lot of beers these days with tonka beans and things like that. This beer, if I was blind smelling it, I might actually think that there would be tonka beans in this one. The aroma that you get out of this is not a million miles away from that. I'm not sure how long ago they released the first batch of this beer, because if you go on the Untappd page for this one, there are actually two different versions of this beer listed, and the second batch is a little bit stronger in terms of alcohol than the first one was. I think the first one was 10 point something, but this one of course is 11.2. But yeah, this one, it actually does have the same, the vanilla beans really give it the same kind of vibe that you would get from a beer that has tonka beans in it. Beans really give you that very kind of smooth, it gives you this really kind of smooth, almost kind of fibrous type aroma. So the aroma that you get out of this beer is really very nice. But yeah, there's a good bit of woodiness to this one as well. The beer towards the front of the nose, it does definitely smell a little bit more kind of woody. It's almost a little bit leathery in places as well, but you do get that nice kind of sugarcaney rum quality coming out of it. Kind of the darker caramelly treacle molasses kind of things that are coming out of this one are very nice, but the more and more you smell of it, I think your nose adjusts to it. The brown sugars get a little bit sweeter, the vanilla comes out a little bit more, and you do get more of that kind of beany quality to it as well, and it's really nice. The aroma to this beer is absolutely beautiful, I have to say, so thumbs up to Puhäste once again for that. But then, it's not a surprise if you've had other stouts from these guys. The aromas that you get out of the Puhäste stouts are always, top class, I think. And it's always half the experience with craft beer and whiskey and things. Enjoy the aroma for a bit and just kind of see how you get on. But yeah, lovely big vanilla notes coming out of this one. On the hoppy side of things, there is a little bit of a light earthiness in the back of the nose there. You can smell one or two little elements of a floral character, and there's a wee touch of grassiness in there. But yeah, the hops otherwise come across as very smooth actually. On the fruity side of things, you do have a bit of plummy note out of this one. You've got the raisins as well. The raisins actually smell really smooth and very kind of juicy in this one, rather than having a little bit of sharpness as they can sometimes have. What else are we getting out of this? Yeah, the fruity notes you do get a little bit of a blackcurranty, blackberry sort of thing to this one as well. But yeah, the fruits in this one, plummy, raisiny, it's almost got a little bit of a kind of pruny and figgy sort of thing going on in it as well. This beer to a degree does have a little bit of a kind of, it's almost got a little bit of a kind of Christmas puddingy type vibe to it in some ways as well actually. Yeah, there is a cakey element to this one. The more you smell of it, the more kind of cakey it smells actually. I really like how this one, I really like how it goes together actually. There is an element of black malt to this. I find that the more I'm smelling it, I do get a little bit of black malt coming out on the back of the nose as well. So the beer does start to show a little bit of its kind of roasty toasty edge the more that your nose adjusts to this one. But overall, the aroma is very smooth and woody. I think in the backbone, the brown sugars kind of sit on top of that. It does have an element of breadiness to it as well, but yeah, it really kind of smoothens out, I think, the more that you smell this one. You do get a bit of black malt in there, and you get some lovely kind of fruity characters to the beer as well. So yeah, it's really very nice in terms of its aroma, this one. Could it be the best aroma I've come across from Puhäste? Quite possibly actually, and that is a feat, I think, for I think that really is a feat for Pühaste. This is the one that really just kind of strikes me best. Remember, beer is always subjective. Different people like different things. But you know, vanilla is something that I really love. Vanilla ice cream, vanilla imperial stouts, you know, all of these things, I really like them. So the kind of brown sugars, I've always enjoyed. I've been a bit of a malt head. I love Doppelbocks and Scotch ales and things like this. So if you've got a bit of vanilla and you've got a little bit of brown sugar in a beer, it is going to be right up my street. And I think this one, for me, it just ticks the boxes of things that I like from an imperial stout. Big fan of raisins as well. I do like eating my raisins. But yeah, take a little bit of time and enjoy the aroma of this one before you get stuck into it. It's got beautiful fruits, lovely big cakey aroma, and all those brown sugars and other complexities in there. There's a lot of descriptors you could use to describe the aroma of this one, but you know, it is just a beautiful beer. So yeah, let's have a taste of this one then and see how we get on. This one is the Dekadents, an 11.2% imperial stout with raisins, aged with raisins I should say, and rum-soaked vanilla beans from Pühaste Pruulikoda in Tartu in the southeast of Estonia. Let's get stuck into this one. Slange, skål, terviseks. Oh yeah, man, that's a really, really lovely beer. What you'll notice with this one, I'm just starting to get the aftertaste out of it now. This is a really lovely, big, kind of thick, oily imperial stout in my mind. But then when you go into the aftertaste, that's when you really get the kind of dry, roasty, toasty notes out of this one. It does say on the bottle that it's 80 IBUs. And you know, I can believe that. I probably would have guessed blindly that it was a little bit less than that. I might have thought it was maybe about 70 or so. But yeah, this beer, it's got a really nice transition to it. I like that about this one, how it comes in and it's really big and sweet and oily, but then it just lets you know on the aftertaste, yeah, this is an imperial stout, make no mistake. But yeah, this is another beautiful, beautiful beer from Pühaste, and I'm not surprised. You know, these guys know what they're doing when it comes to the imperial stouts, and yeah, it's lovely. It really is. Yeah, and it's actually interesting because, you know, one of the Swedish breweries that you would always compare this with would be Nerd Brewing, and when I was actually at Pühaste talking to Eero, I put him and Hannes from Nerd Brewing in contact. I gave Eero Hannes's number. So I don't know if they'll have made contact actually, but it'd be awesome to see Nerd Brewing and Pühaste collaborate together. I think that would be a really interesting one actually. I'd love to see that. But yeah, you know, that would be an interesting one. The Pühaste beers and the Nerd Brewing beers, they remind me so much of each other actually. And it's the same, you know, I think they've got a kind of similar brewing style actually, because the Nerd Brewing beers, they always have this, they're always kind of sweet in the beginning, and then they just give you a little bit of that roastiness on the back end. I think these ones, the Pühaste ones, are maybe just a little touch smoother, whereas the Nerd ones are a little bit more kind of roasty, I think. But yeah, when I try this one, it really reminds me of why I said to Eero, you know, you should check out Nerd Brewing in Malmö, because we were talking about the other breweries I'd interviewed and things like that at the time. But yeah, this is awesome, this beer. Let's try and break down the flavour a bit and describe it for you a bit more. So yeah, when you take this beer in, it's a lovely, big, oily imperial stout. You know, as cliche as it is to say, this one really does fit the name Decadents. It's lovely. So yeah, straight away with this beer, you can feel that kind of really roasty, toasty, well-fired bread crusty note. That just blankets the middle of your palate there. I wouldn't be surprised if this one had a little bit of carafa and things in it. I can't remember if I actually filmed the interview in the malt store in the brewery at Pühaste. I can't remember if they did have carafa and things in there. I think it was German malt that they had, but you can tell this one, it's got a lovely kind of really roasty, toasty, well-fired bread crust base to it. It gets a little bit more intense on the back third of the palate. As you move further forward into the middle third of your tongue, it does have a wee bit of a kind of brown bready quality to it actually. And then the middle third of your palate is where you're getting all the kind of most of the complexity out of this one. So yeah, roasty, toasty bread crust, a little bit more of a kind of smoother brown bread. Then you've got a kind of almost an island of like really kind of toasty, well-fired brown sugars out of this one. And you do get, if you move into the very centre of your tongue, you've got the very thick treacle molasses type notes out of the beer, which is really nice. Yeah. Yeah, this one in the very centre of your palate, it really is very kind of treacly and molasses-like. As you move further out from that, it does become more kind of roasty and toasty, I think, on the brown sugar. So I don't get the biscuity notes that I was coming out, that I was getting in the aroma of this. And in fairness, I really don't find this one as sweet in terms of brown sugar in the centre of the palate as I thought it was going to be. The one I'm finding that the kind of beanie flavours, that sort of slightly fibrousy type thing that you get from beans, that's kind of developing more. I think those come out more into the aftertaste, the kind of vanilla bean flavours. You will get the slightly kind of sweeter element of the vanilla if you move if you go to the very centre of your palate and then just move further forward a little bit, straight down the middle of your tongue. You will get the kind of vanilla notes coming out of it there, but the beans really do give you a bit of a kind of that sort of fibrousy type vibe. They kind of sit there on top of that kind of brown bready note that I was talking about earlier. But the beer in the centre of your palate, it really does dry out the further that you go into the aftertaste. It's a very, layered beer, this, but I think, yeah, the beans, the vanilla beans and stuff, they really come out as more of a kind of thought in the aftertaste, if you like. But yeah, if you go towards the back third of your palate, then we've described the middle part of the palate, I think, quite in depth there. It's all kind of layered, yeah, roasty, the roasty toasty black malt, the bread crust, the kind of brown bread there. I think on top of that then you've got the kind of fibrousy bean type notes. Then you've got the kind of the brown sugary layer. You've got the treacly, very dark brown sugars in the middle. Then as you move out from that, it's a very roasty toasty brown sugar, a lot darker than the aroma would give you, make you think. And then if you move just a bit forward from that, you get the slightly sweeter element of the vanilla. But yeah, if you move back to the back third of your tongue, you can feel the sort of fibrousy beanie type mouth kind of feel vibe that you get out of this beer. That sits on top of more roasty bread crust, and it just feels a little bit thicker on the back third of the tongue there as well, and that's quite nice actually. But the beer really does smoothen out the further you go into the aftertaste. Actually, I like that about this one. And yeah, I think the more you drink of this one, the more the roasty elements you get out of it. To a degree, it does have a kind of chocolatey vibe to it as well. I'm finding that in the middle of the palate, the more I drink of this, the more it develops a kind of, it does have an element of chocolatey character to it, in fairness, it would be an 80 or 90% cocoa chocolate there. It really is leaning towards that kind of high cocoa percentage there, and that kind of sits almost just underneath the brown sugars actually. I really like how that goes together. I mean, for me, this one, get a bit of gas out of it. But yeah, it's interesting, this one. This is one of these beers that really seems to evolve the more that you drink of it actually. So it's a really interesting one, this. There is almost a kind of cakey vibe develops out of this as well, particularly towards the front of that middle third of your tongue there. And that kind of cakey note, it's like a well-fired kind of rum cake or Christmas puddingy type thing. That kind of builds the border between the middle third of your palate and the front third of your tongue, where you're going to get the fruity notes. But yeah, hoppy side of things then. Back corners of the palate, you've got a really quite big earthiness coming out of this beer, but as you move further forward along the sides of the palate, that earthiness does develop. You do get a little bit of an almost herbal quality there. There's a wee tiny bit of a floral aromaticity on the front corners of the tongue, and then around the very front curve of the palate, it's a little bit lighter and more grassy. Then behind the front curve of the tongue, as I said, you've got that nice oily bubble where the fruity esters push their way out of the beer, and this is where this one is really interesting as well. And you can definitely feel around the edge of the palate there, whenever you add fruit into a beer, it always suppresses a little bit of the kind of bitter edge of the beer. You can feel some of those raisiny notes around the very front edge of your palate there. But yeah, that sort of cakey border I was talking about between the middle third and the front third of your palate, it really does develop and become more roasty, I think, a bit later on. But yeah, if you go towards the back of that front third of your palate, I'd say yeah, there's a wee bit of a kind of plummy sharpness to this one. The raisiny notes do give you a little bit of sharpness too, but then as the flavour develops, you do get a few more kind of figgy and pruny notes there, and as you reach the kind of front, yeah, so it's plums, a little bit of the raisins in there, then as you move further forward it's more datey and pruny, and then on the very kind of front tip of your tongue, that's when you get the blackcurranty and blackberry sort of vibes out of this one. I'm not sure what hops actually would be used in this one. You can use things like Magnum, it's quite popular in Imperial Stouts. You can just use Cascade. Simcoe can give you some really interesting vibes when you put, or some interesting fruity notes when you put it into dark beers like this as well. But you know, Eureka, Williamette, these are the ones that really give you lovely red fruity notes. I never asked Aero actually what hops he put in this one. But yeah, the fruity notes out of this are really quite nice, but the fruit I think takes a bit of a back seat in this beer, really does develop more of a kind of cakey and roasty toasty black malty kind of aftertaste. In fairness, I think that's really what goes on in this one. It does become more and more roasty the further you go into the aftertaste, and it's definitely sweeter in the beginning, and then it gets more roasty and dry the further that you go into the aftertaste. But I think what you can probably gather from this review is that this beer is ridiculously complex, but it's again just a beautiful, beautiful example of, you know, Pühaste's Imperial Stouts. These guys are very, very capable in this style in my experience. And yeah, it's one of the things, I've got a couple of beers from the Silver series which I've heard are really, really good, the barrel-aged ones, and you know, the level of complexity you get out of even just one of their normal beers, it makes me wonder about those Silver series. Are those beers going to be just kind of overload a little bit, or are they, you know, I've heard they're really good, but I'm just thinking, you know, what level of complexity are you going to get when you put barrel aging into the mix with something like this? It's just kind of craziness, I think. If you barrel age it, this beer's, you know, crazily complex as it is, barrel aging this one's going to make it, you know, off the charts in terms of complexity, but beautiful beer, as I say. In terms of the mouthfeel then, you know, I don't think there's much doubt about this one. It's full-bodied. The carbonation is actually very, very smooth. The mouthfeel overall, it does have a degree of wetness to it, in fairness, I will say that about it, but it's got a lovely big kind of oily character there. Some, how do you say, there's definitely a bit of, there's a high IBU to this one. It says on the bottle it's 80. The more I drink of it, the more I wonder if it would be a little bit more, but yeah, there's a good IBU count to this beer. The malt base, like I said, it's got roastiness to it, it's got a degree of sweetness to it, but it's really kind of very, very smooth. It's a very complex malt base. It's very difficult to kind of pinpoint where you are in this one. It's not the sweetest stout I think that you're going to find from Pühaste. It really starts to lean more and more towards the roastiness the further you go into it. There's a good little bit of bitterness from the hops, but the bitterness is coming from a combination of the malt base and the hoppy side of things, and it's got a really nice kind of complex juiciness to it. It's a little bit sharp in the beginning, but then it really rolls out and becomes just a little bit more kind of juicy in things as well. But yeah, overall this is a really, really very, very nice beer, this one. And you know, it's definitely worth trying if you get the chance. So yeah, massive thank you to Aero for giving me a bottle of this one. This one has been a really, really interesting one to review. It's one of these beers that it takes you a little bit of time to get your head around, but you are in for a treat when you try this one. Actually, I feel in a way that I've not done this beer justice with the review, but this is really, really nicely done. You know, the one thing you will notice about this beer as well, as I say, the things that they've added to it, the vanilla beans and the kind of rum-soaked, well, the rum-soaked vanilla beans and the raisins, I think these come out a little bit more. The fruity side of it is there in the beginning, but I think in the case of the rum-soaked vanilla beans, you do get a little bit more of that out further in the aftertaste. And the rum, I think the whole rum kind of soaked thing, you do get a little bit of the rummy element to this one, in fairness, but it's kind of sitting there. I never really mentioned that in the video right enough, I didn't think about it, but yeah, when you go to the front corners of the palate and just move diagonally back, that's when you're going to get some of the kind of brown sugary, sugar caney type vibes coming out of this one. But yeah, it's a really interesting beer, this, like I said, so take a little bit of time and just you know, enjoy it. You are in for a treat if you try this one. So yeah, let's leave it at that for this one. This one was the Dekadents, 11.2% ABV Imperial Stout with rum-soaked vanilla beans and raisins, aged with raisins, from Pühaste Pruulikoda in Tartu in the southeast of Estonia. Another beautiful example of the Imperial Stout from these guys, a brewery that are very, very capable in this style, in my opinion. Yeah, really, I'm really hopeful that that Nerd and Puhäste collaboration will come off. Fingers crossed for that. That would be awesome. Two very, very capable breweries in this style. But yeah, awesome to review this one. I hope you guys have enjoyed it. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Puhäste as well. This has been a bit of a longer review because the beer is quite complex, but we'll leave it there. Thanks again for watching. Check out my social media, check out Pühaste Pruulikoda, but most importantly, check out the Dekadents Imperial Stout. You are in for a treat with this one. Slàinte, skål, tervisek, stay tuned on the channel for more Estonian beers soon. Cheers.